wolves. I heard the wolves cry. Okay, let's try again. Out of the... Oh, I keep doing the wrong lyrics. Out of the dark mist, into the circle, under the moonless sky, I heard the wolves cry. It's midnight, it's midnight, it's midnight tonight, 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 tonight. Forgot the lyrics to this part. It goes, I saw her conjure fire from the depths of hell. I heard her whisper through the veil. It's midnight. It's midnight. It's midnight tonight. Tonight, tonight, tonight. It's midnight. It's midnight. It's midnight tonight, 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 tonight. Alright, that's just gonna have to be good enough. Welcome, Coven, to another Midnight Esbat. We are in a different part of my house. I have no idea if you can even hear my voice because we're in a different part of my house. My mic is like right here, so I'm gonna look this way to talk into it. But whatever. I'll look wherever I want. If you're listening to this and you're not watching it, my eyes look scary. Also, you may hear me take a swig out of my water here and there. I live in a really weird climate. I live in the Midwest. If you're not from the Midwest, or even from the United States, I feel like if you're from the United States, you hear people from the Midwest complain about the Midwest weather constantly. But if you don't really know anything about Midwest weather, it is in the middle of a giant piece of land. And it's not like that land spans a huge part of the northern hemisphere. And so we get crazy weather patterns here. Because we have from the north, like from Canada, we have all of those I guess it would be low pressure. I don't know. We have cold fronts coming in from... Am I a weatherman now? Maybe I am. But we have cold fronts coming in from the north, from Canada, and then from the south, like from Central America, and even just like the southern United States. We have like all the warm fronts, plus we have a lot of tropical weather that makes its way up to us. And we're on the eastern side of the Rocky Mountains, so we have like all of the weather that comes off over the mountains. And it all converges, which is why you have a lot of things like tornadoes and such here. I live in Missouri, and in the summer, it's extremely humid, and then instantly it turns extremely dry in the winter, or at least comparatively, compared to how it has been over the summer. It's really dry. So, like, my hands and it just happened, like, just this week. That's another thing about weather here, is there's no nothing is gradual. It's just like, bam, all right, it's fall. Like, today's fall now, so, like, get with it. And that basically happened this weekend, and now all my hands are cracked. My, like, lips are super chapped. My face, I've been, like, lotioning myself every few minutes, so I have to really hydrate. So I just want to that's a long-winded apology for my listeners who may hate ASMR sounds like I do and get really irritated by them. I'm probably going to be drinking out of my water, way more than I'd be able to edit it out, because I do try and edit all of those gross sounds out, because I really don't like those sounds, so I apologize. Okay. So today's episode is super exciting. It's talking about tarot and how to use tarot for self-care. You're going to hear sounds like that throughout the episode because both of my dogs are sleeping behind me. I'm on my bed in my bedroom. I got a brand new mattress. Anyway, we're not going to talk about that right now. But we're going to talk about tarot. I wanted to bring you guys into my bedroom to do this practice because a lot of my tarot practice is actually in bed as a sort of nighttime, sleepy time thing I do. I do not really do tarot at the altar. I'm honestly the kind of person who whips out their tarot cards wherever they are. I know this might not fly with a lot of people, but I don't like set up a space for tarot. I don't like burn incense or call anything. Tarot is like a anywhere, anytime practice for me. However, I do enjoy the times where I do like make it this sort of like ritualistic thing. And if I ever am reading for somebody else that's not myself, I typically do like burn specific incense to the kind of reading. I anoint and cleanse my cards really well with oils and things like that. I do the whole ritual thing when I've done professional readings for people because that's what they're paying for. And I feel like it's easier to connect with the person when you like try and call in their guides and whatnot. But just for myself, I'm like, hey, you know what, cards, like, let's do this. I'm using the Wild Unknown deck. This is the deck I use for literally all of my readings. It's just the deck that calls to me the most. And since I have such a strong relationship with it, I'm able to really read it well. But we're not actually going to do readings today. I am going to have episodes that are just readings, and those are going to be at the end of every month as a reading for the next month. So, but we're not actually going to do real readings today. I'm going to instead teach you 4 different ways, or methods, or techniques, I guess, to using tarot as a form of self-care. And it kind of seems obvious. I feel like if you are already using tarot, you're probably like, yeah, once I start listing the techniques, you're going to be like, yeah, I do all of that already. But to me, this was the next step in my practice. So after I learned what the cards meant and how to read them, this is sort of where I took my tarot. And I know it may seem obvious for some of you, but I just want to get this guidance out there for people who may be wanting this next step, or they have missing links basically between how do I get from reading the cards to actually using this in a daily practice. And I'm all about that daily practice thing, you know? So we're going to dive into that. I'm really excited because I get to play with the cards, you know? Like any other of my episodes, you can obviously read this episode on my blog. There's a full written version that you can read. So and then you can obviously listen to this episode, you can just listen to it here on YouTube, or you can listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to podcasts if you don't want to watch it. If you're listening to it now and you'd rather watch, you can go to YouTube and watch it there. This is episode 2, and the official title for this episode is How to Use Tarot as a Form of Self-Care. Wow, how creative. Okay, so the first self-care technique I'm going to teach you about for tarot is using tarot without a spread. And I feel like this is probably the scariest method of using tarot for newbies, for people that got their tarot deck, they read maybe one book, A Beginner's Guide to Tarot, that mainly taught them about the different type meanings of the cards. Maybe it taught them the history of tarot, the history of the Rider-Waite Tarot, and potentially things like the Fool's Journey. They've newbies have probably learned the 3-card spread. They've probably learned Celtic Cross. This method teaches you how to read for yourself without the Celtic Cross and without the 3-card spread, so that way you can have a conversation with your deck. I'm sure you've seen the memes, the tarot memes that are like when you get called the fuck out by a deck of cards. Like, this is what's going to get you to that conversational relationship with your deck. And I know this sounds so weird to talk about a quote-unquote inanimate object, like a deck of cards, as having a relationship with it. But I really want you to think of your cards as an oracle, as a communication method. Cards are just the medium between you and a deity, between you and a guide, between you and your higher self. Some people have even talked to just like spirits, like ancestors, through the deck. I highly believe that this form of divination is one of the best ways to use to communicate with like anyone across the veil, essentially, or on the like higher planes, or whatever speaks to you, even if it's just your unconscious. So using the cards that a deck is simple. What you have to do is you have to begin by figuring out your question. So understand what you need to know, and that the answers are going to come to you in a sort of journey. And basically it's really simple from there. So I'll show you how I do it. So I start by shuffling my cards, and as I do this, every time I shuffle, I leave my feet planted firmly on the ground. Heel, balls of the foot, toes. All of that should be touching the ground, both feet. Don't cross my legs. Don't sit Indian style. I want my feet to be as grounded as possible because I want the energy from my crown and my third eye to run completely down my body and into the ground. So basically connecting with that higher source all the way down. Sort of like a lightning bolt or like electricity always needs to be grounded. So do I, which is pretty cool considering we're just literally bags of meat, electronified. So I need my electricity to have a ground. So I plant my feet. Even if the rest of me is sitting in a weird way, like I don't sit like with a different kind of posture than I normally would. I just make sure my feet are planted. Then I shuffle, and I only shuffle, like you don't shuffle tarot like a deck of playing cards. You just do the pick up and release style of shuffling. Oh, shiza. I do this. I never use cards that fall out of my deck because I'm extremely clumsy and I have very small hands. So cards will always fly out of my deck. This is another thing you'll learn as you gain that relationship with your deck, is you will have rules and boundaries. My deck knows that I only pull face up. I do not do reversals. And my deck knows that if a card is important that falls out of the deck, like if it was trying to tell me that message, it will tell it to me again. I have made this deal with my deck. My deck knows this. We've worked together for literally like 6 or 7 years. It knows that these are my rules, basically. I do this. Sometimes you can do it where you're seeing the cards as you shuffle them. Sometimes you can flip around so you can't see them. It really doesn't matter. Basically, I just shuffle until intuitively I feel like it's time to stop. And then I ask whoever. I always ask, like, I always say the guides, but whoever gives me the answer. How many times should I split the deck? Alright, right now it's telling me 3. So I split it into 3 decks. So I got 1, 2, 3. And then I just rearrange them willy-nilly. So that's how I decide to shuffle. That's how I do it. And then if I'm having a conversation with my deck, if I'm not using a spread, I just go. So the way I do it is off the top, I pull and I ask a question. So I say, how is this upcoming week? I don't actually have a question I need to ask, so let me figure one out. Okay. What does this upcoming week look like for me? Aw. So I got the Lovers card. And then basically you go from here. And each card you pull is going to be a question. You can arrange it on your surface any way that feels comfortable to you. I typically do diamond patterns, and I typically try and stay in 4s or 3s. If I'm asking like sort of a journey, I'll maybe do a linear fashion, but I like cyclical, circular, like full circle patterns. So I always start at the top, and sometimes I do like a cross. So I'll do up, down, side to side. Sometimes if I'm pulling 5, I'll do like a star pattern. I'm going to do a diamond. So my first question is, what does this week have in store for me? I pulled the Lovers, and now you can decide if you're going to shuffle again, if you're going to resplit the deck. I typically don't. I typically pull the next one, and I say another question that helps me sort of get to what I need to know. So this is a great practice for if you are having difficulty explaining why you need guidance, or you just need to talk something out. So if I was really, like, let's say I'm really stressed out. Like, let's put a whole scenario to this reading. I'm real stressed out. Next week, I have, like, a big deadline. Let's say I have, like, a final or a quiz. Not a quiz. Let's do, here, I got a good example. My best friend, she just took an exam that helped her get credentials that she needed to become a certified, like, a public health figure. So that's, like, some certification she needed. But her exam that she paid like a ridiculous amount of money for was last week. So let's pretend like I'm her and it's this week, this upcoming week. So I'm nervous. I need to know what I need to do to succeed. So I ask, okay, what does my week look like? I get the Lovers. Interesting. My next question would be, what is going to help me this week? I got the High Priestess. Interesting, another major Arcana card. Gonna set that down. My next question could be something like, how much will this exam impact my week? I got the 3 of Swords. Next question could be something like, what's hindering me this week? Got the Mother of Cups. So then maybe like the last question could be something like, what do I need to know this week? And I got the 7 of Wands. So then I would take my little spread that I pulled, and essentially I would just look at it. I would look at the patterns in it. So I would think, okay, I have 2 sets of geese in it. I have the Lovers, which for the Wild Unknown deck is 2 geese. And then I have the Father of Cups, which is a swan, similar like style of bird, like a water bird. I have Wands, and I have Wands, Cups, and Swords, so there's no like suits that are important here really. There's no Pentacles, so nothing material is happening. And then I have 2 major Arcana cards, which to me say that this week has major themes in my life. I have the High Priestess, which is my helper. My hinderer is the Mother of Cups, so that's telling me like family things are going to get in the way, which kind of opposes like Lovers, which is interesting considering my week, if I'm thinking about this certification, isn't really focused on Lovers. Anyway, I would go about that and I would just interpret it. And a lot of times this style of reading lends itself to intuitive style interpretations. So if you're somebody who typically like gets different feelings from cards than what the book tells you it's supposed to mean, this is a really good way to read. This is also a really great way to read if you don't have the book on you and you haven't memorized all the cards. I personally think that intuitive reading, while it can be separated from the typical meaning of the cards, that it is just an extra layer. So you should already have a pretty good understanding of what all the cards in your tarot deck mean before you start reading intuitively, in my personal opinion. But this allows you to sort of forego. Like, once you get to that point, you can sort of start breaking the rules, you know? So, like, once you know that, like, the High Priestess means, like, a very intuitive person who's still in the learning stages, who holds secrets and stuff like that, you can take this and make it mean something. Like, you can manipulate the meaning to fit what your unconscious is trying to tell you, I guess is what I'm saying. So maybe in this scenario, the High Priestess is my helper, so I'm trying to get this certification. Maybe it means that my intuition is going to come in handy, because this is in the placement of what's going to help me. Maybe this card means that my ever willingness to learn is going to assist me. Maybe I'm going to be able to learn better while I cram for my exam. Maybe this holds the secrets, holds the oracles sort of style of meaning, tells me that I actually hold all of the knowledge I need for this exam within me. There isn't anything else I need to learn, or if it is, it's not necessarily by the book, but it's instead more intuitive learning. So that's sort of how you do the first section. This is my favorite kind of reading to do. Typically, whenever I do readings for people, it is this style, and I will take their main question and I will sort of dissect it into a bunch of little questions, and that's how I would create the reading for them. I always suggest people too that if you're going to do this style of reading that's very intuitive focused, that's very focused on the unconscious and helping you answer questions and work through problems, have that conversation, is to go slow. Take your time, look at all the symbols in the spread that you laid out. Look at the spread from far away as like a big picture. What colors are you getting a lot of? What numbers are you getting a lot of? Look for the patterns in your spread. And then you can really dive deep into each individual card if you must. Listen to what your intuition inside is telling you too. If you pull a card and you're like, I don't think this was the answer that my guides or whoever is supposed to be giving me, I'm going to pull 2 cards here. So I'm going to pull this card. So I'm going to pull this card, but maybe this card isn't feeling right. It's not answering all the questions for this specific placement, so I'm going to pull another card, and I'm going to have a clarifying cards on top of it. This is really the best way for you to play and let tarot guide you and sort of lead you into this tarot-led self-care practice. Okay, so the second technique takes all of that stuff that we just talked about like reading tarot intuitively and without a spread, and it makes it a regular routinely practice by helping you develop spreads. Creating your own personal spreads to me is one of the funnest, most like creative ways to do tarot. So this is also best if you find yourself drawing cards for the same reason or the same event. So if you're drawing cards every full moon and they're typically asking around the same questions, maybe you should just develop your own personalized spread for them. This also works if you have a grimoire that you are hoping to create as like your universal grimoire, or a grimoire that you have as a guidebook that you sort of pass down generation to generation. I know that's definitely a goal that I've thought would be pretty cool for myself. So developing tarot spreads allows you to do this in a way that makes it more permanent, I guess. So the way you would do this is you would just sort of think about why you need a personal tarot spread. Like I said, it's typically for an event, so maybe you, like every birthday, you do a like birthday tarot spread for yourself where you think about like what you've learned the past year, how you can take that learning and apply it to this upcoming year, and then what to look forward to in the upcoming year. So maybe that's a 3-card spread right there, and you write it down and you pull it every single year. Okay, so we're really going to kind of get in the weeds here with creating tarot spreads. So the first thing you need to do is uncover your use case. So this would be like how often you need to use this spread. And typically it always aligns with an event or a time. So maybe that's your birthday, maybe that's the new year, or every new or full moon, or something like that. Maybe it's a question that you find asking, not constantly, but frequently, something like, is this a good idea? And so every time you have a question about a new project or idea you have, you're going to ask the cards, is this a good idea? And so you need to figure out your use case. So the next thing you'd want to do is create the story around that use case. Almost all tarot spreads in some way or another have a beginning, middle, end. Even if like it doesn't seem like that at first, they do. So the beginning would be the like root cause question. This helps you understand like the underlying issue or the true underlying reason for why you have this question. For more event-based things, this could be the past placement. So this could be something like, what have I learned? Or this could also, I guess, be the present for more like moon phases or Sabbat. spreads, but it's more about like what's happening now or what happened in the past, or what prompted this question or this spread. The middle we'll get to in a minute, but then the end is typically about the outcome. So if your first question or your beginning question is what have I learned, then maybe the end question is something along the lines of what will I need to know. So then you sort of have a beginning and an end. This is considered, like I said, this is considered your outcome question. So if you're really unsure what to put here, you could just put outcome. For like moon phases or something like that, you could say, what is the outcome of this full moon? Things like that. So then the middle is where the actual story happens. So what do you need to know, or what do you need to figure out to get to from point A to point B? So we're going to stick with that, like what have I learned versus what do I need to know. So maybe in that journey from what have I learned to what do I need to know, you have cards that outline things like who's helping me with this, who's hindering me with this, with the who not necessarily meaning a person, it could mean like anything. You can also have things that are like, what are my fears pertaining this, or what happens if I do nothing. So basically you have like those sections within the spread. Developing this part of the spread takes the longest amount of time because there's a lot of thought that should go into it about what you need to know. And then once you have the like time when you want to use the spread consistently and the actual spread itself, then all that you need to do with this is do it and then tweak. So doing the spread. So every new moon, commit to yourself that you're going to do your own tarot spread you made for like 3 months. And at the end of the reading, ask yourself, like, did this actually answer any of my questions? Did I actually get the knowledge that I wanted out of this? And if not, tweak it. Add more questions. Add clarifying cards. Do whatever you need to do to get more out of it. Okay, so the third way to use tarot as a form of self-care is a super fun one because it doesn't actually have anything to do with reading the tarot, but it does have a lot to do with tarot. And that is developing an archetype around a card. And this is so fun to do. I like to do this at the beginning of years. It's fun to do on your birthday, and it's like typical of like universal thing. How do I explain that? So like we're in an emperor year right now, I guess is my point. So like sometimes you don't even need to pull your own archetype. There's just one sort of placed for you by the numerology of the year. But this is also good to sort of uncover things that you think you need to learn. So let's say, I know the perfect example. So we're getting a little vulnerable right now, but I have been extremely unbalanced. Luckily it's Libra season, so I'm very self-aware about that right now. But I need to become balanced. I need to find equilibrium within my life, because if I don't, I am gonna go nuts, essentially. So maybe what I need to do is get myself in a spot, like teach myself how to be the kind of person that finds balance. So essentially what I would do is I would just rifle through my deck until I find the card that represents balance, that maybe represents clarity. Oh, that's a good one. And typically you're going to choose a major arcana card, but sometimes you'll find that a minor arcana card really speaks to you. A good one is, I think, the Nine of Pentacles. It's a woman. She's wearing like a beautiful dress, and she's like showcasing all of these pentacles on a bush. So here are some examples. So I have like the Empress is a good one to understand balance. Not necessarily because the Empress's typical meaning is balance, but because she sort of is like an adult. She, to me, represents the fully formed version of the High Priestess. Like, the High Priestess is going to evolve into the Empress. And you can sort of see that these cards are very similar. They both have the moon here. We go obviously it's a tiger versus a tree, but you have like purples and sort of like this like object, this crystal ball with all the knowing in it, to the knowing or the color is in the tree itself. And also because you have like the moon is in a different spot in the sky, it's sort of like you can see time passing. But so maybe the Empress is a great example of an archetype for me needing balance. Maybe it's Temperance, being able to play with both fire and ice together. Maybe it's just simply Justice. This is typically the card of balance. I could pick any of these to become my self-care archetype. And basically, so like what I'm doing is, the first step I did was I defined what I really needed right now, and that was balance. I thought about like what kind of lessons I need to learn, what will help me continue to grow and evolve in life right now. And then I dug through the major arcana, and I found cards that I thought would suit that sort of, I don't know, theme. You can, like I said, you can also do the minor arcana if any of them stick out to you, or if you have specific concerns with anything that's related to the suit. So this card is a minor arcana card, which might be good for more clarity. It's the Four of Wands, and it sort of creates this like eyeball shape. You have like the center being like the point of focus, and wands typically mean ideas. So this would be a great card if I needed like clarity on ideas. However, I personally just need balance overall, so I'd probably choose the major arcana. And then the funnest part is creating a dedicated practice. So let's say I picked the Empress. So what I would do is I would go online and I would read a ton of different interpretations on the Empress, from Biddy Tarot to like Etany Tarot. I would read about the Empress in like Benabel Wen's book, The Holistic Tarot. I would go and I would read a bunch of external sources about the Empress. If there are any books written just about this card, I would read those books. And then I would do my own internal analysis. So I'd ask myself things like, how do I feel about this card? Do I feel like I can live up to this card? What lessons have I learned from this card? And what resonates about this card to me that I feel like will help me on this journey I'm going through? I also then need to, in my like little dedication practice, I could draw this card. I could embody this card like in how I dress. So if your card is like the High Priestess, you could think like, what would the High Priestess wear today? And you could wear clothes like that. You can, like, I like to use my Rider-Waite Tarot as my archetypal deck. So I wouldn't use the Wild Unknown deck for this, because this is my reading deck and I need to be whole. But a lot of times I will take cards out of my Rider-Waite and I will like put them on my mirror, or I'll put them in my notebook, because I know I don't really read with it. So it's okay if it's like my cards are all over the place. But you can put the card that you need as your archetype somewhere you're going to see it every day. I used to do that all the time with my phone case. I'd put a mini card in the back of my phone case so I could see it. And then basically I would begin to do things in my daily life that brought that card's archetype to the forefront, and start thinking like that. Lastly, you just essentially grow into your archetype and you begin to learn those lessons and become like, have that archetype transform yourself. So if I was using the Empress as my archetype, I would want to eventually, quote unquote, become her. I would want to embody the Empress. I'd want to give off the Empress vibes until I felt that those lessons, like I had absorbed everything I needed to absorb for that moment. And it was time to move on. And sometimes this is going to resonate. So sometimes you're going to be like, holy shit, yeah, I picked the correct card, the Empress. I need everything I need to know from this. I need to learn so much from this card. And there'll be other times where you're like, oh, I picked the Four of Wands, and I read all those interpretations online, and now I feel like I know everything I need to know. There's not really much more for me to do. And that's okay. Maybe that's all you need to get out of it. But going through that sort of journey is an awesome part about self-care in this sense, because it gives you like an external force, an external sense of inspiration. You don't have to be the supplier of it all the time, if that makes sense. So then the last technique is probably the most obvious of them all. If you've read tarot for a long time, this is going to seem very familiar. This is how I've read tarot for a long time. But it's reading tarot to connect directly with your guides, or to connect directly with the divine or spirits. This is probably the most spiritual of all the little techniques I've been giving you. But basically, this is putting your faith completely in an outside force to control the deck. So you would do everything you normally do. And this is how I read for other people. So I typically do that ritualistic practice where I create a sacred space with incense. I'll set out crystals that I think are very important. I will set up a sacred space. I will call the intention for how I want the space to be used and who is allowed in the energy, who's not allowed in. I will sometimes even create the cone of energy if I feel like I need a lot of power, or if the client I'm working with is really far away. And then I sit and I meditate with the deck, and I call in guides, and I only let guides in that I feel have the good vibes, Then I shuffle, and then everything from there becomes about faith, which is probably the hardest part for me. I'm a secular witch, so I am very agnostic. I don't feel called to any one, I'm not a pagan. I don't feel called to any deities or anything, except for maybe Hecate. She's been the only deity that's really, I feel, resonated, and I can't tell if she's actually calling to me or if I just think as an archetype she's cool. I did try and dedicate myself to Persephone, but I feel like we didn't. While I feel like I learned a lot from her, I don't think I did it right, and so I don't think she ever actually showed up. I think I was just hanging out with a cool archetype. Anyway, but I can do this really easily with guides. For some reason, guides and I, we vibe, man. We can have a party, It's really easy for me to get in touch with other people's guides, and it's really cool getting to see all of them in my mind's eye. This is the most spiritual I've ever gotten, is doing tarot readings for other people and having their guides show up. I've never met my spirit guides, but I can meet other people's. One guide I met was a freaking bear, and he just showed up. He's like, "Hey, bruh." Anyway, I'm getting way off topic. But basically, I would have the guides take their hand on my shoulder, and then I would be like, all right, through me, control the deck. And so I would let them shuffle for however long they wanted. I would then start pulling cards, and basically I knew what questions my client wanted answered. So I would ask them. I would be like, okay, why does my client feel this way? And then I'd pull a card and be like, and then they'd say, all right, you're going to pull a card from the middle. Okay. And I would ask what does this week look like for so-and-so client? What should they expect? Then I pull that middle card they want. And basically, I pull until they say to stop, and then we have a conversation about it. So it's very similar to the very first technique I shared with you, where you're using the cards without a spread. When I typically would do pulls for clients, I would develop that spread before I would pull any cards. I would sit and I would do the same kind of mental exercise of okay, what questions do I need to ask? How do I get from here to there? But I wouldn't pull any cards yet, just so I had a guide while I did their spread, just in case. I didn't want things to go off the rails and I end up pulling 15 cards for logistics sake. But that's typically what I would do. I would just have this conversation and trust the process and trust that the answers I was getting were correct. This is the craziest way to pull tarot, in my opinion, in the sense that you're going to get really unexpected answers. Typically, when you create your own spreads and stuff like that, I find that the cards sort of lend themselves to you. They sort of speak nicer to you, or they don't pull as many wild cards. They're just kind of oh, well, play into your hand a little bit. But this method, I feel is extreme, way more volatile. Not necessarily in a negative way, just in an energetic way of we're going balls to the wall right now. I'm really getting for real answers. This is what people mean when they say they got called out by a deck of cards, is when they're doing it with like full faith in the spirit to guide them, and not just I pulled 4 cards from a spread I made for New Year's Eve, you know. But yeah, so that's it. That's the entire episode. I really hope you liked it. I could talk about tarot forever, so I'm kind of cutting it short. And I literally have to clock into work in 6 hours, so I need to go to bed, which is another reason why I chose my room to film, so I can literally just close all this up, scoot it over, and pass out. But thanks for hanging out with me. I'm really excited for this episode and to share it with you. Thanks for coming to the Midnight Esbat. I said this in the last episode, but I'm going to say it again in case you missed it. Midnight Esbat is just like the word for a coven gathering that's not on a Sabbath. So it's like a non-Beltane gathering. It's like instead of a holiday church gathering, it's just like your every Sunday style. That's what this is. This is just our like get together that we have, our regular like coven gathering where we just have like a different topic we're going to discuss every week to learn more about our spirituality. So this week was about using tarot's self-care. Lastly, I want to do a little pitch. You can see at the end of my blog post I do have the pitch for this. In 2017, I think, I shared something called I Want to Learn to Read Tarot in 5 Days, which was a mini course. It had a email course that you followed, and in the email course, it was a video per day, which was at least 10 minutes, including live videos with questions and answers and live readings. And it had a tarot cheat sheet, a workbook to use during the the course, and a full like digital tarot journal page that you could use to learn to read tarot. So I put that back up on my website. You do have to pay for it now, which kind of sucks, I know, but it's $15. You get the whole thing and you get it forever, and it will be sent to your email. So I do want to pitch that in case you are a beginner and you want to learn to read tarot. A bunch of people thought it was valuable, so I keep getting DMs and emails about it all the time, so I figured I would put it back up there for you guys if you want it. But yeah, it's there. You can find it. I'm gonna link to it. But yeah, thanks for hanging out with me tonight. It was so awesome getting to see you. I'm gonna go to bed now. I hope you go to bed now. But yeah. Oh, next week? Wait, hold up. We gotta talk about next week's episode. Next week's episode is gonna be Samhain initiation. I'm gonna explain to you what I'm doing during that time, or what I maybe like what I would want to do. I'm going to a wedding on the 31st, so I don't know if I'll actually be able to do this to the extent that I want to do it, or I'll have to do it during the day, I guess. But I'm going to share with you everything that I typically planned to do every Samhain. It's like a reinitiation ceremony, and I've explained it countless times on Reddit already. So I figured I'd make it a whole episode. But that's going to be super exciting. I'm really excited for that one. So yeah, join me next weekend for Samhain initiation. All right, I am so loopy now. I got to go to bed. See you later, guys. Bye, Kevin.